This video is brought to you by Sydney Maths. In this video, we are going to be learning how to calculate percentages mentally. Let's take an example. If we wanted to calculate 30% of 40 the traditional way, what we would do is we would take 30 multiplied by percent, which is 1 by 100, multiplied by 40. The zeros cancel out and we are left with 3 and 4, which is 12. Now, to do this mentally, there are two rules that need to be followed. The first rule is ignore the zeros. So this 0 here and that 0 there need to be ignored. And the second rule is multiply the numbers. The numbers are 3 and 4. Gives us 12. Now, why did we ignore the zeros? We ignored the zeros because the zeros cancel out with the percentage. So we are left with 3 and 4. Let's look at another example. What is 20% of 50? Let's apply the rules. Ignore the zeros. So ignore that 0 there and that one there because they cancel out with the percentage. And you're left with 2 multiplied by 5, which is equal to 10. Let's look at another example to confirm our understanding. What is 20% of 30? Let's apply the rules. Ignore the zeros, multiply the numbers. And what you get is 6, which is your final answer. So this works quite well when you have zeros in your percentage multiplier as well as your total number. But what if you had a question? Find out what is 25% of 50. Now you do have a 0 there, but you don't have a 0 here. But let's apply the rules. So you ignore the 0, you ignore the 0, and you multiply the numbers. The numbers are 25 and 5, gives us 125. That 0 cancelled out with the percentage, but we were left with 25, which has no 0 to cancel out with the percentage. So what you need to do in this case is move 1 decimal point to account for the 0. So you move 1 decimal point to account for the 0. And then in your answer, you also move 1 decimal point to account for the 0. Let's look at another example to confirm our understanding. What is 25% of 60? So you ignore the 0 and multiply the numbers. 25 multiplied by 6 is 150. Now that 0 cancelled out because there's a percentage here to cancel it out. But there is no 0 in this number. So you move 1 decimal point. You move 1 decimal point here. And then finally you move 1 decimal point here to give you the answer, which is 15. Now let's try to do this in one step. What is 25% of 80. All you do is multiply the 8 with the 25, which is equal to 200. Now that 0 cancels out with the percentage, and because there is no 0 here, you move 1 decimal point to give you the final answer, which is 20. Let's look at another slightly more complex example where there are no zeros in either of the numbers. Let's try to do 25% of 25. So follow the rules, ignore the zeros, but there are no zeros, and multiply the numbers. 25 into 25, which is 625. By the way, it really helps if you know squares, because sometimes with these small numbers, it helps to know simple multiplication like squares and tables. Because you don't have two zeros, you're going to have to jump 1 decimal point here to account for the 0 there, and 1 decimal point here to account for the 0 there. So you jump 1 decimal point here, 1 decimal point here. Because you've jumped 2 decimal points, in your final answer, you will jump 2 decimal points, which is 6.25. Let's look at one last example to confirm our understanding. What is 15% of 15? Again, ignore the zeros, but there are no zeros. So we're just going to have to multiply the numbers. 15 into 15 gives us 225. And because there's no 0 here, you jump 1 decimal point. And because there's no 0 here, you jump 1 decimal point. That gives you 1.5 multiplied by 1.5. And in your final answer, you jump 2 decimal points, which gives you 2.25. So that's it. That's about doing percentages mentally. I hope you liked the video. Please don't forget to like, share, or subscribe my channel. Thanks for watching.